Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickinson, good morning.
Good morning, Rod. Great to be chatting to you again.
One of the good things about Dubbo is the rhinos you have around the place, and their design is going to get a bit of a change.
It is getting a bit of a change. They've been there for some time, Rod. Many people may remember there was a big campaign across the whole state where you'd be driving along and you'd see a rhino in various communities, various cities across the state, all out through Sydney. And a lot of those rhinos have hung around. Different organisations bought some. We had some put around Dubbo. But they've been there for a while now, and people get out and they stand beside them and they want to jump on them and all sorts of things they shouldn't do. But the designs have started to wear out a little bit. So we put out a competition amongst the school kids in Dubbo, and we were inundated with entries. What we wanted to do was to get someone or three different people to draw designs that would be applied to three of our rhinos, just to do a refresh on three of those. And I was lucky enough to be on the judging panel for those designs, and I was wildly impressed by the designs that were submitted and the stories behind them. They all had to put a story behind their rhino design. So we went through a process, had a 5-person judging panel, and picked three of those designs. And I actually got to the stage where I got down to 6 of the designs, and I was struggling to get it amongst those because all of them were fantastic. And anyway, 3 of those designs have been picked. Now those designs that are on paper at this stage from those students will be given to some professional artists to apply what's on paper to a 3-dimensional object in the rhino, and then you'll see some new designs around the community. So you may see some missing rhinos for a little while as those rhinos are moved from where they are to the studio of each artist, and then the designs will be applied, and then you'll see the new design pop up.
Well, this is all good news for tourism of Dubbo and Western New South Wales. In fact, my question without notice is, when is Dubbo going to create a big rhino?
Well, that's been one of the many big things that have been discussed right up there with the Big Dunny and Dunny Do, and I don't know that there's been any definite plans for a big rhino. It's hard to know what you want to make big with all the big things that we have, with big bananas and big strawberries and all sorts of big things around the place. So I don't know anyone's had a serious discussion about that, Rod.
Well, you've got a big association with the rhino and the Western Plains Zoo. I think it's an opportunity going missing.
Maybe.
There's to be an expansion of the renewable energy zone.
Yeah, this is exciting news as well. And one of the things that we think around our community is that renewable energy has a chance to transform the economy in Wellington completely. Now, on our doorstep around the Wellington and Badengra areas is the Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone. Now, that goes over into the Mudgee Council area, the Coonabarabran Council area, and obviously our council area. And it'll be good for Dubbo, but it will be transformational for Wellington. At this stage, the size of that res is 3 gigawatts. But there's already been an announcement just recently by the state government to say that in stage 1, they want to change that to a 4.5 gigawatt renewable energy zone. But by stage 2, which is out to 2038, they want that to be a 6 gigawatt renewable energy zone. So doubling the size of what's there. And what that essentially means is it'll double the economic impact of that. They're estimating $10 billion in injections from private funds. They're saying 5,000 jobs, but our modelling already says that we're thinking over 6,000 jobs will come from this res. And there's at least 15 years of construction there. And in that time frame, Rod, we need to make sure that we seize this opportunity and really change that economy in Wellington. I want Wellington in 15 years' time to look completely different to what it does now. And one of my plans is to create a visitor centre. I'm calling it a REAC, a Renewables Education and Activity Centre. And I want to create that in the Wellington area. If you look at something like the Parks Dish or the Snowy Hydro Scheme, where they've got a discovery centre in Cooma, both of those get over 100,000 visitors a year. That would really transform the economy of Wellington if we could get 100,000 visitors a year going to some type of visitor centre.
Yeah, because it gets a lot of traffic through that little town.
It does indeed. What we want to do is get the traffic to stop and spend some of their money as they go through.
Now, you're a councillor, you wear many hats, you're a mayor. Do you have a job description?
No, it's funny, isn't it, in this modern environment we work in, that everyone has got a job description. It's one of the important things. Someone applies for a job, what's a job description? You're working away at your job and someone says, can you do that? And people say, it's not in my job description. So surely, as a councillor or a mayor, you would have a job description. There is not really one. The best I've been able to find, Rod, is in the Local Government Act 1993, which I do refer to a lot in my day-to-day work. There's a section there. There's one section, section 232, if you're interested, and it's got 106 words of the role of a councillor. So that's about the closest I can find. But there's also a section there, section 226, which says the role of the mayor. It's got a few more words. It's got 234 words. So not a lot there. But one of the things that is interesting is that I do go from time to time to places like Sydney, or actually the last 3 weeks I've been to Toowoomba, I've been to Sydney, and I've been to Canberra. And some people say, oh no, you're out there on more junkets. Well, they're not really junkets. It's a fair bit of work. You're probably working 14, 15-hour days at each of them. But Section M of the Section 226 I mentioned before says that the role of the mayor is to represent the council on regional organisations and at intergovernmental forums at regional, state and Commonwealth level. So I kind of feel justified that when I do go to these various trips that I'm actually fulfilling the best that I can find as a job description in there.
It's good that you're doing that, and it's an unusual situation. Maybe that's another thing that the council can look at or push with the local government organisation.
Yeah, indeed. It is one thing that would be nice, because anyone that comes into that sort of role would expect to be able to say, well, what are my duties? What do I have to do? In fact, one of my children many years ago for a school project had to bring in a PowerPoint of what their father or mother did for work. And my daughter brought in a PowerPoint slide of about 50 different slides of me either cutting a ribbon or cutting a cake. So the kids in that class assumed the job description for the mayor was to cut ribbons and cut cakes.
Yum. Now, you met with the Federal Minister King recently.
Yeah, and this is one of those things, talking about that job description, about getting around and making sure you're representing the community at different levels. We do go to Canberra on a semi-regular basis, and I was there last week, and the two ministers I met with, Jenny McAllister I met with, she's the Assistant Minister for Climate Change and Energy, and that was good, talking about our RES, etc., as I've just mentioned a moment ago. But the meeting with Catherine King, who's the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, revealed a really good mindset change in the federal government around grants. Now, there were two things about it. Catherine King has made it quite clear to everyone, don't knock on my door and try and pitch your grant. If you come and try and say, please give us a grant, then basically we don't want to have this conversation going any further, because she has been very clear that she doesn't want people thinking that you just knock on the minister's door and suddenly you get some grant money, which is good, because you want the money from the federal government distributed fairly and evenly. One of the issues that we've brought up with the government in years gone by has been that some councils find it too expensive to put in for some of the grants. And I know that sounds crazy because you want the grant money, but often they'll have so many requirements for a grant. They want a business case, they want a whole range of consultation performed. That's just to put the grant in. You can easily spend 50 grand, maybe 100 grand getting together the information to put a grant in, and then you don't know if you're going to get it or not. So Catherine's changed the process now, and there's an EOI process, an expression of interest process. And we've actually got a grant that we're putting in exactly under this process. You put in an EOI, you'll tell the government the broad outline of it. You don't spend a huge amount of money and time resourcing and researching that grant, and then you'll get a stop-go at that stage. So the staff will look at it and they'll say, no, we don't think this is good enough. Don't waste any more time on any more data to back this grant up, because you're going to get a no. Or, it looks pretty good at this stage. If the data stacks up, if the research you do is okay, and if you develop a good enough business case, sure, we'll give it the green light. So it gives you a chance to dip your toe in the water, see how it's going to go, and then if you're going to spend the money, you know you've got a pretty good chance of getting the grant after you spend that money. So I really like that process.
I like the sound of that process as well. I hope that continues and state governments pick it up as well.
Yeah, indeed. That would make a lot of sense. And I don't think that some ministers realise sometimes just how much work goes into a grant application and how much expense is involved, not just staff time, but some of the external data you've got to actually go through and get it sometimes.
All right. Major events to Dubbo Regional Council area has brought a bit of a financial windfall.
It does bring a lot of money to the community, and one of the really challenging things from council perspective is that some of these events come along and knock on our door and say, can you please give us some money? We think we've got a really good event for this particular region. And most of the time they've got a good argument. We've got a limited budget as well though, but we've done a bit of analysis over the last year, over the last financial year, and we've found that for every dollar that we invested, every dollar that council put into one of these events, it returned about $83 into the community. Now, the challenging part for council is these events don't often put a lot of money back into council coffers, so we're spending our money on behalf of the community. Obviously, a lot of these events generate income for the hospitality industry, for example, into pubs and clubs and cafes, but we don't get that money back directly. But still, that's our job, to keep supporting the community. We've got two different streams of funding. One stream, Stream 1, returned about $3.2 million into the community in economic injection. And then Stream 2 returned about $10 million in economic injection. So these are fantastic. If you look at Stream 1 events, you've got things like the Wellington Vintage Fair, the Burrendong Fishing Classic, Easter Showdown, Western District Ladies Golf Tournament, City of Dubbo Stedford, Dubbo Winter Whisky Festival. So some of these events aren't huge, but you keep adding up all these little events and they do add up to a lot. Some of the larger events that we've supported have been things like Cricket New South Wales Youth Championships, Athletics New South Wales Country Championships, a State Carnival for Cricket New South Wales Swimming Championships, Little Athletics New South Wales Region 3, and of course the Junior State Cup, which we held this year, and then we've got for the next 3 years. So again, they're much larger events, and it's pretty easy to see how they inject money with all the people staying in motels, buying things at our supermarkets, so all these great things, but they just keep ticking the economy over with lots of different events. And one of the great things about all of that, Rod, is we're not relying on just one event to have where you inject lots of money from that one event. And I'm thinking of some communities that have a large event once a year, and if something goes wrong and they don't have that, it really hurts the economy. From our perspective, lots of little events actually help the economy keep ticking over the entire year.
And of course, you get people coming from overseas for some of these events, and they just don't stay in Dubbo. It filters out to other regions as well, and particularly people from other states and other countries, they go, oh, we actually want to go back there and have another look.
Exactly right. And some of the things around the region are fantastic. Lots of things worth seeing around the region. So you're right. Once people make the trek out to Dubbo as the initial reason they come, once they're here, well, it's not that much further to go. I'll just duck out to Burke or Bree or Cobar. So some of those various areas around there get some added tourism, whereas they mightn't think to jump in a plane if they're coming from overseas, to jump in a plane and fly to Cobar. Once they're only a couple of hours drive away, they might say, let's go out and do it.
We're speaking with Matthew Dixon, Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. What are your plans for Australia Day 2024?
Well, I'm not quite sure what the plans are yet. We've had a bit of a discussion about this, and we've got a recommendation from our committees through to council in a couple of weeks' time, but I'll tell you in a couple of weeks exactly what the plan is. This is on the back of 2023, when we held Australia Day ceremony in Wellington on the 25th of January as a twilight event. And then the 26th was held in Dubbo as a daytime event in the morning of Australia Day. Now, one of the things that was interesting is we were keen to have both events as twilight events in 2023, but there was a technicality and the Department of Home Affairs wouldn't allow us to actually have the Dubbo version on Australia Day itself. So we argued the toss for a few months. We ended up losing that, so we gave up on that. But they've now changed the rules. So you've got a window. Anyone across the nation can have their Australia Day ceremony up to 6 days before the 26th or up to 6 days after the 26th. So we've got some discussions that occurred at our committee meetings last week, and we talked about having both events the night before, and that went to a vote of council, and that went down 5-4. We then put forward a separate recommendation that talked about having the Wellington event as a twilight event again, the same as we did this year, and Dubbo on the morning of Australia Day, and that got up 7-2. So that's the recommendation that's gone through to council. But in 2 weeks' time, there might be a bit more discussion that happens in the community. People might hear a bit more, or councillors might hear a bit more from the community. That vote might be a little bit different, but I'm pretty certain that we're going to have at least one event as a twilight event next year.
This is good. And Dubbo Regional Council is getting involved with the, is it Vinnie's Community Sleep Out?
Dubbo, yeah, the Vinnie's Sleep Out, certainly. And this is something that it's modelled on the CEO Sleep Out that you'll often see in capital cities, in metropolitan areas, for example. But I think it's one of those things that whenever you do things like this, you want to make sure that money stays local. And that's exactly what's happening in this particular scenario. Any money that's raised is staying local. So I've got myself and I've got two of my fellow councillors, Shibli Chowdhury and Matt Wright, that are sleeping out. This is on the 25th of August. We've got the CEO, Murray Wood. We've got one of our staff. But there's a number of community members. I think we're up to about 15 so far that are sleeping out, all about raising money. We've got a Dubbo Regional Councillor councillors page there for donations, where people can donate money on that. So on the 25th of August at 5 p.m, we'll go to Old Dubbo Jail. We'll sit around, have a bit of a chat. We'll talk to various people that come along there. We'll get our sleeping bags and we'll snuggle up together and go to sleep and stay the night there in the cool. Although I must admit, right, it's getting a bit warmer, which is a good thing, because I'm not a great fan of sleeping out in the cold, but it's getting a bit warmer now, so I'm not sure how cold it'll be by the 25th of August.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be fun for you all, whichever way, as you snuggle up to each other. Matthew Dickinson, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Good to be talking to you, Rod.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.